I will cover the notable storms of the 1958 Atlantic hurricane season, which most notable was Helene, so that is the one we were covering because this season was not very interesting. Name list for this season. The origins of Hurricane Helene can be traced to an easterly wave formed near Cape Cabo Verde on the 16th of September. Moving towards the west due to trade winds associated with the Hadley cell, the disturbance gradually intensified. On September 20th, ships in the system's vicinity reported widespread shower activity and generally low barometric pressures. Early the following day, a reconnaissance flight reported evidence of a weak circulation with gusts of 35 miles per hour and heavy squalls surrounding the circulation center. At 0200 UTC later that day, the U.S. Weather Bureau office in San Juan, Puerto Rico, began issuing bulletins on the system for public interest. In Herdat, the tropical wave was first classified as a tropical depression at 0600 UTC on September 21st, well east of the Liberty Antilles. At that time, the depression had maximum winds of 30 miles per hour. At a west-northwestward track, at roughly 20 miles per hour early on September 22nd, the storm initially changed little in intensity. However, a large upper tropospheric anticyclone developed over the southern Atlantic coast, producing the favorable wind shear needed for tropical cyclone development. A second reconnaissance flight reported an intensified tropical cyclone, reporting that the system had reached tropical storm status. At 00 UTC on September 23rd, the depression attained tropical storm strength, with maximum winds of 40 miles per hour and a central minimum pressure of 1013 millibars. The U.S. Weather Bureau issued their first advisory on the newly developed tropical storm later that day, giving the storm the name Helene. Despite the storm's poor organization, Helene gradually intensified in favorable conditions generated by the large anticyclone. Throughout the day, the second anticyclone moved eastward until it was situated off the mid-Atlantic states, while a mean trough in the lower levels of the atmosphere became situated over the United States east coast. This would set a path for Helene to pass very, very, very close to the United States. The tropical storm attained hurricane intensity by 2200 UTC on September 24th. However, in postseason analysis, it was found that it reached it by 1200 UTC. At that time, gale force winds extended up to 220 miles out from the storm's center of circulation. The storm steadily strengthened as it moved towards northwest, around the western periphery of the Azores Bermuda High on September 25th. Encountering the anticyclone situated with the mid-Atlantic states, Helene began to curve slightly towards the west. The lack of strong steering currents in the storm's vicinity caused the storm to move very slowly throughout the day, giving the storm time to slightly intensify. By 00 UTC on September 26th, Helene straightened into a Category 2 hurricane with a minimum pressure of 980 millibars. Moving slowly towards the Carolinas, recon flight reported a minimum pressure of 948 millibars, a drop of 40 millibars from the previous day. As the hurricane near the coast, the eye became apparent on coastal long range or WSR 57 weather radar images. On by 800 UTC on September 26th, her, uh, uh, Helene strengthened to Category 3 and then a Category 4 on the following day. The major hurricane continued to strengthen before reaching its peak intensity on September 27th, wind of 150 miles per hour. However, Helene's earlier lowest barometric pressure was recorded earlier that day of 930 millibars. Still moving northwestward due to the influence of the North Azores High, the storm came in within 10 miles of the U.S. East Coast, between recurving towards the northeast out to sea. As Helene recurved and accelerated towards the north, the wind field also expanded from the by midday September 29th, Helene had weakened to minimal hurricane strength. It later transitioned to an extratropical cyclone by 1800 UTC that day. Helene passed over Newfoundland, with gale force winds having expanded 500 miles from the system's center, coinciding with the U.S. Weather Bureau's final advisory on the system. Helene's extratropical remnants considered eastward across the Atlantic, becoming a dominant synoptic feature, dissipating on 0600 UTC on October 4th, just west of Great Britain. Helene's close proximity to the United States resulted on impacts across the East Coast. Impacts were most severe in North Carolina, where the hurricane made its coastal approach. Wind impacts were felt primarily from South Carolina to Virginia, though a frontal zone aided in precipitation as far north as Maine. In the United States, Helene caused $11.2 million in damages and one indirect fatality. In the following section, I will focus on North Carolina damages. Roughly paralleling the North Carolina coast beginning on September 26th, Helene's slow movement and strong intensity resulted in moderate to heavy impacts in coastal areas of the state. Despite the hurricane's Category 4 intensity, due to its closest approach of land remaining offshore, its storm surge remained less than initially forecast. The hurricane track also placed its stronger storms in the eastern hemisphere of the storm, away from the land masses. Surge height peaked at 6 feet near Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, Wilmington. In Wilmington, Helene produced ocean swells at the coast 2.5 to 3 times per minute. There, the cumulative sea level was roughly 9 feet above normal. However, as a result of the storm striking at low tide, damage caused by storm surge was mostly mitigated. Despite this, sand dunes in southern areas of Fort Fisher were mostly destroyed by waves. On Cedar Island, strong winds produced by the hurricane pushed inland, inundating homes. Elsewhere, minor beach erosion occurred. Further inland, several weather stations reported hurricane force winds. The Weather Bureau office in Wilmington, North Carolina, reported maximum sustained winds of 88 miles per hour and a peak gust of 135 miles per hour. Beach resorts there were heavily damaged. Wrightsville Beach, located just 10 miles from Wilmington, 10 houses were flattened by the hurricane. Damage to homes there were estimated by police to cost $300,000, and extensive damages to the water system was reported. Long Beach damage was less severe, with only minor property damage. Waves pushing past sand dunes caused cracks in seaside roads. Those surveys have made no damage estimates. Damage in Holden Beach were reported to have been worse than Long Beach. A 300-foot pier and a pavilion in Ocean Isle Beach were destroyed. In Topsail Beach and Kerr Beach, several homes and businesses were either uprooted and destroyed. Yapton Beach and Chalette also had similar reports of unroofed homes. 2 homes on Topsail Island were demolished, and extensive property damage was reported at Atlantic Beach. At Cape Fear, winds were estimated at 125, with gusts up into 160 miles per hour. The name Helene was now retired and is used up to this day, while it will next be used in the 2024 season. In the next episode, a major hurricane once again strikes the Carolinas, and an unnamed storm leads to horrific deaths in Canada.